If I could just ask everybody to take their seats so we can get started. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all so much for coming. Welcome to the 76th annual Kristallnacht luncheon and celebration of the memory and honoring of the memory of the 6 million Jews and other victims of Nazi intolerance. This is a very special year for Wagner because with the strong backing of community groups at Wagner, notably the Chai Society, we've been able to really emphasize the place of the Holocaust as a moral compass in 21st century education at the college and in branching out to the community. Elie Wiesel spoke at Wagner in 2012, 2 years ago, and challenged us to think about where does the Holocaust fit in a 21st century education? Where does it fit in the kind of values we want to inspire our students with? What should we do as it becomes harder to find eyewitnesses to the Holocaust to ensure that Holocaust education continues and that the values it promotes to prevent racism and anti-Semitism and persecution, to promote tolerance and understanding? How can we ensure that this is part of education going forward? And so Elie Wiesel said, whoever hears a witness becomes a witness, and we must not stand idly by. And so Wagner has created a program where we've asked 6 college students to go out into the community with survivors and to speak with 6th graders, 8th graders, and 11th graders at 4 different schools on Staten Island, including IS 49 Middle School, welcome, who are here today, Port Richmond High School, where there'll be a speaker, a Holocaust survivor, Arthur Spielman, will be speaking there later today, with 2 Wagner students moderating and introducing his talk, as well as at Lavelle Preparatory Intermediate School, where Gabi Held, who will speak with you today, spoke last Wednesday to another 60 students. So all told, in addition to everybody in this room, there's at least another 150 students that Wagner this year has been able to reach out to in our pilot year of a Holocaust internship program. And so I'm very proud of the work that the 6 Holocaust interns have done. I'm very proud of the work that the 6th graders, the 8th graders, and the 11th graders have done to study the Holocaust. And in particular this year, our focus is on our neighbors as survivors, Staten Islanders who themselves survived the Holocaust and who came back, who were able to survive and tell us their histories so that we can remember this event in perpetuity. And Elie Wiesel is from Hungary, from the border of Hungary and Romania. Gabi Held, who will be speaking to us in a few moments, is also from Hungary. His journey took him through the same cattle car as Elie Wiesel, but not to Auschwitz, to Bergen-Belsen, where another very famous young Holocaust survivor, the same age as he was, who also arrived at Bergen-Belsen, was Anne Frank. Some of you, I'm sure, have read her story. So in many ways, his story will capture these 2 iconic, towering figures, moral figures in the Holocaust, and combine their 2 stories together. Before we ask him to speak, I'm going to ask my senior Holocaust intern, Julia Teichman, who is also Hillel president and the grandchild of survivors, to say a word about Kristallnacht while we're celebrating this program today. We'll then have a brief candle lighting ceremony. Julia will then return to say a few more words about her personal connection to the Holocaust, and then we will ask Gabi Held to speak, and then for the students after he speaks to ask questions. And I've heard a lot of the students' interesting questions already, and they add a wonderful energy and again solidify the importance of the Holocaust to this idea of we all need a moral compass and studying the Holocaust can be that moral compass for the 21st century. So I'm going to call upon Julia to just remind us again about why we need to come together today to celebrate Kristallnacht. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me, or do I have to use the mic? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. On the eve of November 9th into the early morning of November 10th, 1938, the Nazis organized a wave of violence against the Jews of Germany and Austria. Hundreds of synagogues and Jewish-owned stores were destroyed. Thousands of Jewish men were rounded up and locked up in concentration camps and prisons, and 91 Jews were murdered. On the 76th anniversary of Kristallnacht, we commemorate the horrors of the Jewish experience during World War II. Today, we gather to remember so we will never forget, and most important, to educate the lessons of the Holocaust. And now we're going to do a little candle lighting to honor the members here.
Okay, we're going to be lighting 9 candles. The first 6 candles are each one in honor of the 1 million Jews who were killed. One of those candles does stand specifically for the children. 1 million Jewish children. Only 10% of Jewish children in Europe survived the Holocaust. I'm going to call upon first one of those children that did survive, Brenda Perlman, to come light a candle along with Aaron Aronowitz, also a survivor, and 2 students, Savini and Viat from IS 49, and 2 Wagner students, Jennifer Weil and Dalton Gregory, to come please light the first 6 candles.
That's why you have a document. Yes.
To light a candle in honor of resistors and rescuers during the Holocaust, I'm going to call upon Joseph Svevner and Rebecca Siegel. Rebecca is a Wagner alumni whose great uncle was a member of the resistance in Poland. And this one. And the final candle is so that we never forget and remember also all the victims of genocide since 1945 in Rwanda, in Darfur today, to remind ourselves how important it is to continue the value of ongoing remembrance of the Holocaust. So I'm going to call upon Savini and Cameron to come up and light that candle.
stand here today to remember the hardships my own family faced during the Holocaust. Without their strength, I would not be here today in front of everyone. I stand here today to honor them, to never forget their story, and to never forget the stories of others. Through this internship here at Wagner, I have had the privilege to meet Gabi Held and Rachel Gottlieb, an Auschwitz survivor who currently resides on Staten Island. Each of them have such a remarkable story, and what ties them together is the perseverance and hope they held on to. We, as the next generations, can learn so much from listening to the stories of these Holocaust survivors. Most importantly, I stand here today to educate others about the atrocities of the Holocaust. The need to remember is not for the sake of remembering alone, but in hopes that future generations may inherit a world in which the concept and concepts leading to genocide is a distant memory in human experience. I stand here today to emphasize the importance of standing up to injustice, not to remain silent when witnessing injustice. To quote Martin Luther King Jr., "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." So now, I would like to introduce Gabi Held, who survived the Holocaust and is here today to share his story. Gabi was born in 1931 and was 8 years old when the war broke out and 12 years old when transported to Bergen-Belsen. Gabi experienced the horrible conditions in ghettos to the horrors of Bergen-Belsen. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Gabi Held.
Okay, my name is Gabi Held, and I was born in Hungary, in a small village. And my parents had a little grocery store, and my father had a bar. We lived in this small village a couple of years. There was no electricity. We used kerosene lamp. There was no water in the house. We had to go to the corner and pump the city water in a pail.
Hello? Yeah, you have to put it right up to your mouth. I'll hold it for you.
Okay, I can do it.
Start again.
Anyway,
Start again.
anybody heard the beginning, or shall I start all over again?
Yeah.
As I say, I was born in Hungary, in a small village,
Even closer.
when there was no electricity and no running water in the house. So we used to use at night kerosene lamp, and if we needed water, we had to go about a half a block and pump up by hand into a pail, and we carry it to the house. And there was a small river running through the village, and the people went out to wash up a little bit, and they made laundry into the river. As I say, we lived there a few years.
The students in the back, I'm sorry, they can't hear you. You have to lean a little bit by your mouth.
As I say, we lived a few years in this small village. My mother had a grocery store, and my father had a bar. And we had a maid that helped to grow up and help around the house. After a few years, we moved to the third largest city in Hungary, Szolnok. The first city was Budapest, the second is Debrecen, and the third was Szolnok. It was a beautiful Jewish community there. They built a beautiful synagogue, which is today become a museum. Anyway, so we lived in Szolnok for a couple of years, and my mother also opened another grocery store, and she tried to give us a better education, so she paid and she sent us to Budapest in a dormitory where we slept over. So she wanted to give us a good Jewish education. After a couple of years, we went back to Szolnok and started the anti-Semitism after the Kristallnacht broke all the Jewish stores, broke the windows, and they burned down the businesses. After a while, they told us to wear a yellow star. It's about 2-inch diameter, and we had to wear it on my coat. And it was very limited time, so we couldn't get out from the house only, let's say, between 8 and 10, and in the afternoon between 4 and 6. So they gave us a chance to buy some food or whatever we needed. But this didn't last us too long, because the anti-Semitism grew day by day. One day, we were at the home, my mother was cooking. Suddenly a German soldier and the Hungarian police came to the house, and they told us, you got 15 minutes, pack up whatever you can, and go front of the house. We couldn't believe what we heard, but we had no choice. My mother packed up whatever we could with my 2 brothers, and we were front of the house after 50 minutes. And the group started to come already on the street, and the police took us, and we joined the group. We were walking about 3/4 of a mile outskirts of Szolnok. There was an old sugar factory which turned to be the ghetto. So we went to the ghettos. We had to clean up the place because it was dirty. There was no food whatsoever in the beginning. There was about 1,000 people in this factory, so they cleaned the rooms wherever we could, and they gave us some old mattresses and no blanket, no pillows. And we were there, I would say, about 3 to 4 weeks. There was no bathrooms, so they gave us a shovel to dig up a trench, and they put down 2 wooden boxes and the 2 by 3 wood lumber. And without shame, everybody just had to go, and they made whatever they had to. It was going like that day by day. Many people committed suicide because they just couldn't go through what they saw. After a while, a train pulled up by the ghettos, and they told us to line up outside the train. And they told us to go all the way to the beginning, and they started to shove us into the cattle wagon. About 50 to 60 people, they shoved inside the train. It was already late afternoon, the train filled up and started to go. Again, we had no water, no food, no facilities, absolutely nothing. We were traveling the whole night, and some people, if they had to do something, urinated in the corner or whatever they had to do. The train was going the whole night, and the next morning stopped someplace, we don't know where. So finally they told us to get out of the boxcar, and they let us use the bathroom, and we washed up a little bit, and they give us some drinking water. After a while, they shoved us back into the train, and we were traveling another day and a night, and we stopped and we had to get off the train, and we were walking into another camp. The name was Dachau. We went into the camp, and they selected the very old people and the very, very young people, and they put them on the side. And the rest of the people, again, I don't remember exactly, but they gave us some food. And half of the people stayed into the ghetto of Dachau. And the other half, they told us to leave, and the German soldier was with us and he was carrying us, came with us, and we stopped by a small village, and it was horse and buggy, and we sat on the carriage, and we were going and going, traveling to a small farm. Since there was no German soldiers and no men on the farm, they made us work, which was for us, it was beautiful. They made us work on the field and into the barn, and on the premises there was a doctor also. And we were on this farm working about 2 to 3 months. And finally they told us to pack up whatever we had, and we had started to walk. I would say we walked about 5 miles from this farm. And we get to the village, and again they told us to stay. And again, they put us on a horse and buggy, and we were going and going. Time, I can't remember exactly what, but when we get off from the horse and buggy, we started to walk again. And then when we found out that we're going to Bergen-Belsen, as we were going into the camp, there was a soldier, and he said, "You stinker Jew." He said, "You're coming in here, and you're gonna go out there." He showed us the chimney and the smoke. That's what he meant. We're gonna go out there, so they're gonna kill us and they're gonna burn us. So finally we get into the barracks. It was like a big bungalow colony with bunk bed, and we filled up all the places, and we were waiting and waiting. It get night. Finally they gave us some soup. I remember the name, it's called Bergen-Belsen. It's made from turnips, and it's like little squash. And that's what we had for dinner. We got like a bunk bed, and as I say, we were 3 children, and I don't remember exactly how many more, but we were in the barracks like I would say about 15 to 20 children, and mostly women, and just a couple of men. They gave us some work to do, also clean up the bed bodies. We had to put them in a wheelbarrow and put it outside the gate, so the soldiers took them to the crematorium. We were at the camp a couple of months, and still there was some Jewish people that keep the religion. And they found out my age, and I told them I'm bar mitzvah. So they gave us a slice of bread as a bar mitzvah boy. It was like gold. And a couple of months later, I told them again, I have a bar mitzvah. So they gave us another slice of bread. And we were at the camp. And one day they told us, everybody get out. Oh, but before I forget, every morning we had to get up like 4 and 5 in the morning, and we had to stay in front of the barracks. Because the German came around 9 o'clock and they counted the people. Every single morning. We got up early in the morning and we were waiting until they came. They counted the people and they went back to the barracks. So many people died, and it was so natural to see people just collapsed, and they put them in a wheelbarrow and put it outside the gate. I was standing always by the gate because new transport came, and I told them maybe you have some food, and they throw us some, whatever they could give me. After a while, they told us, you're going to take a shower. So everybody went out, and 2 German soldiers were with the group, and we were walking out from the camp into a big building, and they told us to get undressed. We put our clothes on the side, and we went into the big room where we were supposed to take a shower. Unfortunately, it wasn't a shower. There was no handles, there was no shower head. It was a gas chamber. And I'm still asking the same question over and over again. Why? But fortunately, there was no gas, or I don't know what happened, but after 20 minutes we were standing there naked. They told us, arouse, get out. And we tried to get our clothes. And that's how we survived the gas chamber. And until today, I don't have the answer how come they didn't give the gas. So we went back to the barracks. And we stayed there. My mother got very sick. She got a stomach typhus. She had a high fever. So when they brought us the food in the morning, they brought us black coffee with a slice of bread. And I was volunteered to bring back the container into the kitchen. I brought back the container into the kitchen, and I was looking around, and I saw a jar. I don't know what was in it, and I stole it. I went back to the barrack, to the bungalow colony we called, and I opened the jar, and I found schmaltz. It was like a fat. And one of the women told us, why didn't you make your mother some kind of a soup? So I had a big metal box. I had a pocket knife, and I opened a little door, and I took a piece of wood which was holding the mattress, and I sliced up the little wood and made fire, and I boiled for my mother's water and put in this fat, and I forced down to her throat day after day after day, and in miracle she became better. She lost a lot of weight. She was like skeleton. Not only my mother, all the people, because we hardly got any food. In the morning, as I say, we had black coffee with a slice of bread, and late afternoon they gave us this soup, turnip soups. Many people died from hunger, and it was not so natural to walk between the dead like nothing. After a while, the American came and they bombed the crematorium. The crematorium is where the place where burning the dead bodies. After they bombed the crematorium, I remember a big tractor trailer came into the gate, and they unloaded all the dead bodies. But before they unloaded, it was like 100 people on the tractor trailer, and I saw one of the hands was moving. He was half dead, but not completely dead. And they throw it in the middle of the yard. They put kerosene on the dead bodies, and they lit it up. And it was burning day and night. And they brought more bodies to it. This black smoke and the smell, even though we were so hungry, but you lost their appetite. After a while, it was already towards the end. A lot of soldiers left the place, and again they told us, especially the children, go and you have to take a shower. So I told my brother, after we lined up, 2 soldiers were coming with us, and we were going back towards the gas chamber. And I told my brother, I have a bad feeling, I don't want to go back. So slowly we stayed behind the soldiers, and we went back to the camp where my mother was. And my mother was hiding up on the top of the bunk bed. And all the children who went to take a shower, they never came back. We were the only family who came back to this city with 3 children. None of the children came back on this city. And not only this city, other cities also. So finally, after a while, my mother saved the bread what she got, and she was sharing with us because she covered us with a blanket when we went outside in the morning, because the German came and they counted us. After a while, they told to get out of the barrack, and we started to go outside the camp again, as they shoved us into the train, and we were going, we don't know where. After a while, the train stopped, and the 3 German SS soldiers came to one of the group, and they showed us the letter. They had the order to kill us, but they said, if you're giving us civilian clothes, we're not going to do anything for you. Because they knew this is the end of the war already, so they didn't want to be as a German soldiers, so they gave them civilian clothes, and that's how we stayed alive. And after this, we found out we were a 3rd group that went to this forest. 2 groups before us, they all were killed, and they threw them into the river. Fortunately, the American came in the late afternoon, and they were liberated us. Yes, they took us right away on the trucks into the first city. It's called Hillel. And they did the same thing to the German, but the Hungarian told us, get out of this house. So they left the house, and the American put us into their house. And we were staying in there. And many of the people died because they suddenly saw food and they couldn't resist. And the doctors told everybody, don't eat, don't try to eat because your stomach won't able to handle it. But many people just couldn't help it. And they were eating whatever they could have, and many people died from stomach virus. And after a while, we were in this place, and the Israeli government came and told us if somebody want to come to Israel, they'd be more than happy to help us to leave Germany. And there was other choice. We had to go back to Hungary because we wanted to find out if my father was still alive, because he was in a labor camp. So we went back to Hungary and we found my father. He was working by a Jewish family in the store. And that's how we found our father. And when I came back to Hungary, we had to leave Hungary because my older brother was just about the age of the army. So my mother says, "We have no future here." She paid somebody some money, and he smuggled through the border. And we were walking the whole night, I would say about 10 to 12 miles. And we went to Czechoslovakia. And from Czechoslovakia, we were there. Again, the Israeli government came there, sent some shaliach, some people that if somebody wanted to go to Israel, they would help us. But as I say, we went back to Hungary. And that's how we found our father. And just about, this is my story. Thank you.
I want to just give you all a minute to think about the kind of questions this story raises, this history of a childhood in a loving family in Hungary that suddenly is changed to, rather than just playing on the streets, thinking about how to beg for bread from Jews arriving in cattle cars in Bergen-Belsen. That dramatic transformation, who is responsible? How did it happen? I want to open it up to the questions of some of the young people in the room. And then at some point, I hope someone will ask what happens with his boxing career. So we have a chance to hear about fighting back a little bit. But if any of the young people, I know you have some questions, would like to come forward and ask a question. Yeah, okay, either college students or the younger students. Yeah.
Well, I have a question. Did you feel, after the war was over, did you feel some type of way towards Germans, or? I said, after the war was over, did you feel some type of way towards Germans?
How did you feel about the Germans after the war?
The same I feel today. It's the same. Never changed. It's still deep in their heart. They still hate the Jews. And still anti-Semitism in there, even though they don't show it. But it's still, for some reason, they blame the Jews for everything. And they still stay the anti-Semitism in there. Not only in Germany, in Europe too.
Did you hear the question? The question was if he thought the Germans had changed and or if there was still anti-Semitism in Germany. Okay, next question. You can stay there. Yeah. Say your name and where you're from.
I'm Charlize, and stand up. I'm Charlize, and I'm from IS-49. Have you ever been back to Germany since, or have you visited a concentration camp?
The question was, have you ever been to back to Germany or to Europe or visited a concentration camp?
And no, I didn't go back to Germany, but I went back to Europe to Hungary to visit the place where I was born. But there is no little change about it.
There was still anti-Semitism.
It's still the same anti-Semitism all over.
Another question? Go ahead, you. Yeah, they just come first, stand up.
What was school slash... Okay. My name is Florentina. I'm from IS 49. What was life slash school like before the war began?
The question is, and I think this is a very important question, what was life like as a child, especially school? What was school like before the war?
Before the war, we had a special school. It's called the Dormitory in Budapest. It was like a private institute that my mother had to pay in order to stay there and get Jewish education. And we were sleeping in the place before it started all the anti-Semitism. And then we had to go back to Hungary. I mean to the Soviet.
And was it with all boys or boys and girls? Or?
No, it was separate. It was boys. There was no girls. It was a Jewish. It's called the Hillel. It's a Hebrew school, like a Hebrew school, but only boys, no girls.
And what subjects did you study?
We studied about the Jewish laws, about the Torah, and we were also we had Hungarian teachers, a regular school.
My name is Xavier. I'm from IS 49. What did you dream of? What did you dream of about? Well, what did you dream about at night during the Holocaust?
The question was.
So turn the volume up.
Hello? Well, the question was, during the years of the Holocaust, did you have dreams? And if so, what did you dream about?
Unfortunately, it's not only once, not only twice. It's always by many times. I wake up at night and I feel like going through again, especially when I had this lecture, even before, like last night. I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and still it's behind my back, behind my mind. It's impossible to forget what I went through, unfortunately.
Any other question? Want to come here and ask?
Hi, I'm Helen from IS 49. What motivated you to keep on going when you were in the camps? Did something motivate you?
Say it again.
What motivated you to keep on going in the camps?
We had no choice. We went day by day. Our mind was only to survive. And many times we hardly ate anything, just water or whatever. But you'll be surprised when you're in the situation that you want to survive. It's amazing you survive. Lost so much weight, and you get used to it. You get used to be hungry, and your mind just didn't function the way a human being is supposed to function.
Earlier, the student had asked a question about during the years of the Holocaust, when you were their age, like 10 or 12, at night, What did you think about? Was it dreams? Was it nightmares during the years you were in Bergen-Belsen and in the labor camp?
It's hard to give an answer because I can't remember exactly what was the dreams, but I know one thing. On your mind was always food. Food and survival. After you see all these dead bodies burning and the smell what was in there, and you pass by like nothing. It was worse than garbage. And your mind just kept used to it. You don't think anymore as human being. Your mind is completely out of order.
They're having trouble hearing you again.
Hello? Hello?
This is very
Yeah.
soft-spoken.
Got it. Yeah.
All the questions you couldn't hear? None of the questions? But you could hear me ask the question, but just...
Lori, maybe he could face this way more.
I said, it's very hard. You asked me the question, what was in my mind while I was in a concentration camp? Your mind is completely blanked out. When you see all these dead bodies, and the smoke, and the smell, you had only one thing on your mind: survive. Doesn't matter what you saw, you just didn't register it in your mind. You just went by like, it's like an everyday routine. It's so natural. And as I say, you were hungry, and one thing was on your mind: food, only food. And that's how kept us alive. Strong mind.
Maybe we can have one or two more questions. Is there anybody else from the community who wanted to ask a question? Do you want to actually, should I get her to stand up or it's okay?
My name is Hannah. I was just wondering, you said you had an Israeli shaliach coming. Did you ever end up in Israel or you came straight to America?
The question was, you had an Israeli shaliach. Did you ever go to Israel or did you come straight to America? And I'm thinking as you answer this, maybe you could also tell us a little bit about after the war, what happened and how come you became a boxer.
No.
Again, you have to, for some reason in this room is terrible to...
No, after a while, so as I say, my mother paid somebody to smuggle through the border because my older brother had to go to the army, and if he would go to the army, we would never see him again. So my mother paid somebody, and he smuggled through Czechoslovakia, and there was people from Israel. They tried to tell us to go to Israel, but as I say, we had to go back to Hungary because we wanted to know what happened to my father. We didn't hear from him all this time. But anyway, so from Hungary, we went to Czechoslovakia and Italy, and by boat we went to Israel. And I was so much anger in me, that's why I became a boxer. I just wanted to hit everybody. And I went to the Navy in Israel. We lived in Israel. We were there from 1948. And I became the Israeli middleweight champion. And then in 1960, I came to the United States.
Is there one more question? Anyone from the community? Students? Can you actually come up here? Just say your name.
Okay, my name is Khadija. On the anniversary of Kristallnacht, how do you feel? What do you think about it?
Thank you, that's a good question. That was a very good question. On the anniversary of Kristallnacht, how do you feel? You know, what are you thinking about?
Yes, I'm thinking about the Kristallnacht, that it never ends. There is always going to be a time when they hate the Jews, they blame the Jews for some reason. As a matter of fact, in Hungary, they call the Jews, they gave them a name, Rozsika. It's mean in Hungary, if you translate the letters, R-O-Z, it means Rohot Jido, stinking Jew. But they didn't want to say in Hungary Jew because they would understand, so they gave a name Rozsika. So as I say, Kristallnacht is never ends. In my mind, there is always going to be, if not exactly Kristallnacht, but they always going to be a hate against the Jews.
Any last question? Otherwise, I think what I'd like to say to end this is that I think that is something that we all need to think about. First, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I know how hard it is. I want to thank Julia Teichman for her beautiful grandparent story and her introduction. I want to thank all of the young people who came and asked questions, and all of the community people who came out today to help us honor the memory of 1 million Jewish children, 6 million Jews of all ages, as well as the resistors. One of my favorite quotes from the Holocaust is, "Thou shalt not be a perpetrator, thou shalt not be a victim, but above all, thou shalt not be a bystander." And the reason we do these events is that so that this hatred, whether it's based on religion or race or any other kind of negative attitude that people have towards each other, we have to learn how to overcome this. We have to use these stories as inspirations that we should always treat people with their full humanity that they deserve, that we should keep our eyes open to make sure that we stand up for people when they're being in any way brutalized or attacked, especially if it's for religion or race or ethnicity or gender. There's so many lessons to learn from this. Wagner, as I said, has made a big commitment in many ways to the community, and this is one of the solid pillars of this commitment to our community and towards creating strong citizens who will fight for everyone around them, for their community. This commitment continues in 2 weeks. Actually, on Thursday, November 20th, we're having another event, a film about a Jewish family in Berlin. And it's a story of Holocaust survivors who are Jewish, who decide to stay in Berlin after the war without telling their children that they're Jewish. They tried to hide their Jewish identity. They try to figure out how can they stay in Germany. And then the author of this story, who's actually the second generation, the child of these Holocaust survivors, is going to grapple, help us understand her story. She's going to be there in person. The film director, who is German and not Jewish, but who's won all kinds of awards from Israel, from Yad Vashem, for his films that raise questions about the issue of responsibility and how to take responsibility for people around you, how to stand up when there's wrongs that are committed, how to fight back against this kind of hatred. Both the filmmaker to answer questions, and we'll also be showcasing even more the educational work of the Holocaust interns. So I have some flyers if any of you are interested in that event. It's next Thursday, November 20th at 6:30. Please make sure, especially if you're from the community, that you signed in so we can continue to keep you informed about these kind of events. It's very important for community members to showcase for younger people their own commitment to this ongoing process of trying to understand how the Holocaust happened. And then lastly, I'm also leading a trip in March to Auschwitz with stops in also Berlin and the Warsaw Ghetto, the scene of resistance, as well as Krakow, and finally Auschwitz. And so if any students or community members might be interested in joining us, if you know of any alumni of Wagner College, I have 12 students who are already signed up. That's more than enough. You only need 6 to run the trip, so we're definitely going to be going. And I welcome even more people who might be interested in going on this important journey. So thank you very much for being part of this moment, and remember that it's only if in a week, in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years that you remember this moment and you remember Gabi's story, and that you pledge to remember what it means when a childhood is destroyed by this kind of anti-Semitism, racism, hatred, intolerance, and pledge not to do it again, not to allow yourself to be in a situation like this, to be not a bystander, that we can be sure that the world will become a better place for all of our children and grandchildren. Thank you very much.